I think it's safe to say that there is an actual error in the current art school scene, and that error is teachers teaching the student about innovation, which I think is pretentious. That innovation in itself is a pretentious thing, that it's not something natural one creates. It's kind of being forced upon art students to succeed in a scurrying capitalist system, to succeed, to stand out to others, that there's such thing as pretentious innovation, not an accidental one, but it's forced upon institutions in order to, if you want to be an artsy student, if you want to be an artist, you have to be innovative all the time, even if we forcefully tell you to be innovative. So this idea came up when I was watching Craig of the Creek. Yes, it's another CalArts show of sorts of multicultural diversity propaganda, but more than that, it it showcases an imaginary middle class utopia, and that kids outside are in their own kind of backyard civilization. The whimsical nature of what I believe a kid thinks is true happiness, when this is completely reserved to middle to upper middle class attitudes. And throughout the show of Craig of the Creek, him and his friends design weird backyard cardboard things that they use to play with each other with. I don't have an example here, but if you look at the picture of the sword is obviously a paper roll with cardboard. And I was thinking that, this show is done by a bunch of CalArts academics, artists or cartoonists who all gather together post Tumblr and create a show where they can express their, in the storyboard process, they're obviously throwing around ideas about how they create and design these things. And so this becomes something that the artist makes up on the spot, and that they think the kids projecting that the kids would like. But we know Craig of the Creek is a fictitious utopia. But even that, this blissful, perfect childhood uh, dream is also the subject of people forcing their innovations of how one should act and one should be, and that if you're innovative, you must be the creative artist, and we want you on the animation team of Craig of the Creek. So other terms I think that's kind of thrown around, it's a little digression here. I think other terms that are thrown around, especially in these art cliques, is workshop. That means a group of artists get together and do something until a fire is burnt, or some fire is lit, and someone invents something. There's this other pretentious term called a collective, which sounds ironic to me because even in the punk hardcore scenes, they used to call each other youths, which goes back to Hitlerjuden or even some of the radical Stalinists, that somehow young people are militant. And it's true for Antifa. And collective is somehow a shared group of CalArts or RISD people. That it's pretentious to assume that you're in some, quote unquote, white nationalist political movement. But anyway, there's also creativity, quote unquote. Everybody can be creative, but the force concept of being creative is something that, you can't be a non-creative artist, quote unquote. And so these three things are paradigms in itself. I think workshop, the collective, and creativity all force this nature that we as artists all have to be innovative. And so I also noticed that it's also a trend in art schools that art classes want you to, quote unquote, practice different art styles in class. So one day you learn about Picasso, and now you have to draw cubist paintings. You learn about pixels in video games, and now you're on a pixel program doing this. And the whole entire point is for you to be liberal, because being creative is a liberal process. That if you can make pixel art and Picasso fake art, then you could do it on your own once you stop paying us money to go to art classes. And then somehow you're in your 30s, and I guess you're doing commission work for Hang Tie or something like that, correct? And again, it's this false axiom, this false principle that school teaches you random methods in order to become independent. This is ironic since the middle class, who are attending a majority of art schools, are dependent upon loans of 100 to 200,000 and a trust from their family. So the catch 22, quote unquote, is that you have to have money in order to go to an expensive art school. So how does one get the money at first? And everybody who's doing art is treating it as a hobby, and you're obviously dependent upon a bigger source, even if that's a scholarship. So I don't know where this is happening, and nobody is in the questioning that capitalism is driving the force of this nature. But another digression, other than Craig of the Creek, I also want to mention another show I remember being on the air called Pickle and Peanut. And yes, it's a silly kind of RISD CalArts show in a way, but it basically stars a pickle and a peanut that has these fun kind of really Christian Lander stuff white people like moments. And the show wasn't interesting at all, but what was it was kind of eye candy, and that one segment would be clay animation, and then the next segment would be this kind of pixel art, and then this different art style. And so the show had horrible script writing, kind of like My Life as a Teenage Robot. It had horrible script writing, but a strong art direction. And so Pickle and Peanut, if they were looking on a job posting site, they would probably would write, looking for an innovative artist to contribute to our diverse and multicultural team. And what they're really saying is they need a clay animator for their 30-second spot of clay animation, because nobody hires clay animators. And so this is the pretentiousness of the innovation, that they're trying to make an innovative show and it's eye candy, but they don't have any, it's not of value. The assumption is you go to art school to learn all these different disciplines, like learning to draw like Picasso or doing this, and then we're going to put you to the test and you're going to go to Pickle and Peanut so we can give you, I don't know, 80,000 for 1 year on commission work, so then you can live a decadent lifestyle in Burbank or LA. So there is this very bizarre, kind of strange subculture that's seething through the work. I think of this, as rewarding your behavior. Just a month ago, there was this controversy, and some say it's a prank or quote unquote satire, which I don't think is real. That if you have a blue check mark on Twitter, you are entitled to the blue check mark on your Beverly Hill house. So that means LA, San Francisco, New York City, to live in these cities, you now need a blue check mark. It's kind of like being the tomato class in higher North Korean Juche society. That you have a million followers and you deserve to live in LA. And whatever your influence was, that you're influencing people under the market, quote unquote, that you have your own Jim Jones cult, that this is the bizarre nature of innovation, that somehow a democracy, quote unquote, worshipped you to be in this position, which is, again, about how corrupt the voluntary society is, the consensual society. That imagine if the Pickle and Peanut people and the Craig of the Creek people all have blue check marks. And I'll get to that in a bit. So innovation as subculture, innovation is not something original or by accident one finds out or creates. Innovation is forced and rewarded by the capitalist system. As for the artist and the student, they desperately try to find quote unquote innovations to make them stand out from the rest. So I guess they can get hired, or that they're going to have a Wikipedia article in the future, or something they've never done before. And this is something, a pinnacle of something I call queer culture, but I'll get to that. So Craig of the Creek's whimsical backyard design, or Pickle and Peanut's different animation styles, all reward, quote unquote, the artist for innovation, creating markets for otherwise useless endeavors, from clay animation to pixel art. Innovations seem to be this pinnacle of forcing that an artist must be innovative. that this is what's in demand. It's not something of drawing beautiful Thomas Kincaid paintings or Lisa Frank girl cliche things. No, it's got to be a painting made of period blood or something like that. And I think the innovation correlates to this other middle class and bourgeois trend called life hacks. And this is some kind of bizarre thing where, it's more for show and entertainment than invention, where invention states that is the creation of necessity. It's not really inventing anything when, if you have a very long power cable for your phone, you just don't wrap it and dangle it around. That doesn't do anything. You just buy a shorter cable. And so the supposedly life hacks is rewarding innovation for the middle class person, saying that somehow you can make use of this interesting thing and that makes you artsy for doing so. And this is where the art school gets its kicks from. That you could actually argue that art school is teaching this fake pseudo enlightenment life hackism in its art class and disciplines. That you're not a real artist unless you practice life hacks. Now back to what I was saying before about digression some slides ago about how how you're rewarded for getting into the blue checkmark LA society. There's this cartoonist, I think is a guy or a girl, goes by this weird Tumblr name of Candy something. Well, that Candy person had a Tumblr page and basically uploaded, as you see on the left, Ed, and Eddie Yowie pornography. And this is, if you don't know Ed, and Eddie, it's kind of bizarre to imagine some anime boys hang tie for girls, but in the context of Western American art. And I read the thing, and it is interesting, but it's the pretentious innovation of, well, this is what the people want. This is what the people desire. I guess they desire Ed, and Eddie Yowie hang tie or something completely useless. Well, that person works as a background animation designer for the new DuckTales show. That's right. So someone who produced Ed, and Eddie Yowie hang tie is now working on DuckTales in Burbank, California. And, that this person got the job because their resume was about Ed, and Eddie Yowie, which is ridiculous. But it just shows you how ruthless the nepotism is. That I guess you're being innovative with gay Ed, and Eddie pornography, therefore you deserve to work on DuckTales. And so we have to question this subculture of that worships innovation. And so I think of innovation as a giant trend. Innovation is pretentious because it constantly assumes the individual must stand out towards queer culture and be an eccentric. Queer culture as in this kind of transgressive liberal elite that worships punk culture, from Jim Goad to Lydia Lunch to Peter Sotos. That's all about the queer condition of queer black bodies against the white middle class bodies. Innovation is a vacuum for useless creative pastimes, and further an excuse to do such things like clay animation, pixel arts, whatever. Since there's no markets for that, we're going to make our innovative DuckTales Pickle and Peanut show so you could be hired on it. If invention is the creation of necessity, innovation is introducing new capital, even market methods and behaviors for future exploitation. About 2 years ago, a little digression here, I had a slide about the myth of the game masterless role-playing game. And that's probably my most controversial video. And in that, for 20 minutes, I argue that this pretentious innovation design is based upon some liberal, linear, progressive notion of weeding out, backwards behavior in black people or something crazy like that. And again, I think this correlates to this Hegelian, this end of the world Fukuyama stuff. It's insane. That's coming into the art world. Art school orbits around innovation because students can be instilled liberal, individualistic snowflake behavior, all values of the neoliberal capitalist order. That this queer culture correlates to innovation. and that we become exercising this keeping up with the Jones mentality for the middle class to constantly stand out in an ideological and culture sense. So, innovation is a bourgeois trend, predominantly for the middle class. Elite queer culture are the ones that control the narrative, and they're the ones talking about inflatable butt plugs and piss Christ. But, you know, it's the middle class that tries to emulate this queer elite culture. And I think the middle class ultimately is not made to be a Promethean Ubermensch artist, and rather are open vessels to mimicry. And the syllabus and the curriculum of the art school has to be aware of this innovation trend and instill better values of discipline, not just liberalism and you practice on your own, but maybe replace it with a paternalism of having guaranteed work outside the art school and art history and understanding one's self enlightenment through philosophy. Those are just some of my examples as a trend against this innovation. But I guess I'll end with my own innovation ending. Bye, 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 bye.